Okay, so let me tell you the truth about Easter. I'm going to be quick and brief. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. We are all familiar with the story of Easter, or the story that's attached to Easter. It's the same one that we hear every year, year after year after year after year. God was crucified, he was buried, he was resurrected, he returned. For this sacrifice, we are all saved in Christ. If we believe in Christ, we're saved in him. That's a common narrative, and for some reason, it's not been complete. Year after year after year after year, we go and we hear this message and we believe it, but it fails to transform us a lot of times because there's missing context here. The real miracle in the resurrection, the real miracle in the story behind Easter is not that Jesus was resurrected and saved our sins. It's a little bit more complex than that, even though it's true. I don't deny anything that the churches or the pastors or the common narratives say. They are true, but there are unlearned lessons because there's missing context. As I go through the story, understand that I'm not contesting anything that we all understand or say is true. I'm adding to it. I'm making it more complex. I'm making it more complete, okay? So it's not a denial or a contesting of anything that we know to be true in the Bible. It's actually enhancing it to the point of true understanding, hopefully. In order for us to understand the true heartbeat, the true soul of the sacrifice of the resurrection, we have to really have the right context. We have to go back to the beginning. What did we gain in the resurrection? We gained something that was lost. That's the miracle of it. We gained our salvation. We gained our ability to have our salvation. We gained our ability to be one in God, which had been lost. Let's go back to the beginning. In the beginning, God created Adam of the dirt. Adam was born naturally of the world, the only human being in all of existence to be conceived this way. He was created from God's earth, which God created perfect. It says it. God created the earth perfectly. From something that he made perfect, he created something else. The potency was lost there. God created the earth, and then the earth created Adam, right? All under God's will, but there's a middleman there. For that fact, Adam was born a human. He was born with human vulnerabilities. He was born with human vulnerabilities, but he was born with 100% connection to God. Everything on the earth is vulnerable to something, right? There's vulnerabilities in every species, every organism. Right? So being born on the earth means that you're vulnerable. When you're in heaven, you're complete. You're no longer vulnerable. Adam was born from the earth. He was born a vulnerable species, right? But he was born with 100% connection to God. When you think about the connection to God, I think about animals. At this time, there's no language. At this time, there's no communication between God and Adam. There is just connection. When you think about animals, when you think about the other species, the trees, the organisms on the planet, there is no communicating between them and God. There is just connection. And they move and they migrate, mate, and they inhabit and they live and die. Everything is directed and orchestrated by God, everything, and they all accept it. And they have instincts and they have abilities, and there's a food chain, and everybody respects it, and nobody abandons it, and God orchestrates the whole thing. And then there's people where we were once connected in this way. Adam had this type of connection. He was born vulnerable to losing it. Being born of the earth makes you vulnerable to losing. Where did the vulnerability really set in for him? He was vulnerable at conception, like every species, but then something happened, right? Adam was incomplete. He was lonely. He needed a companion, a partner. God created Eve of Adam's rib. Adam was born from something that was perfect, and he lost potency slightly. He became vulnerable. And then Eve was born of Adam. She's even more vulnerable, right? Each cycle has made us more vulnerable. There's a great mistake here. Eve, in her extra vulnerability, was approached by a serpent, right? The devil. Eve unintentionally is more vulnerable. Therefore, the serpent attacked her. He was able to convince her to go against God. She went against God. She became disconnected. Adam became disconnected. He followed her, right? You hear a lot of people talk about the obligation falling on Adam. It is Adam's obligation because he is the less vulnerable species. They're both vulnerable, but he's the less vulnerable species and he's responsible for his companion. She was not made responsible for Adam. This was Adam's gift from God that God told him to take care of, right? It didn't go in the other way. God spoke to Adam and he asked Adam, why did you go against me? At this time, Adam and Eve are experiencing something that they had never experienced before. What they were told was the power of God, the might of God, be equals to God if they were to consume the apple. That was a big misconception. It was a big manipulation because they didn't gain any of those things. And people today try to say that the ability to choose, the ability to create, the ability to have consciousness and awareness is equal to what God could do. And that's far from true. It's really a punishment, not being connected. And for that reason, you have to figure it out for yourself. You have to choose, right? It's a burden, right? We're intended to be like other species on this planet, but this fatal mistake gave us something that is not a godlike ability. It's really a burden. It's really a sin. It gave us awareness. It gave us self-awareness, right? The birds and the bees are not aware of self. The trees are not aware of self. They're only aware of purpose. They're only aware of what they're supposed to be doing, and they follow it to a T. They have no clue who or what they are. That's why you see animals self-sabotage or sacrifice themselves in ways that, a human would think their way out of, right? That's why you see primitiveness and savageness in animals that humans can choose away from or choose into, right? Animals don't have awareness of self. A bee will sting you and commit suicide in a heartbeat, and it was not a choice. It was not a sacrifice. It was only God's orchestration of how things work in the world and how balance is and how it's supposed to be. And the only thing on the planet that disrupts this is humans. What they gained was self-awareness. They learned how to see themselves. Then they all of a sudden felt like they were naked and they tried to cover themselves. Then all of a sudden they realized this and realized that. All of a sudden their lives were complicated and weighed down with their understanding of self. This is not a God-given, a God-like ability. This is just one of the things that God does and has that other animals and creatures don't. The ability to understand self. But with that ability is a huge burden, a huge responsibility. How do you manage yourself and figuring that out, figuring everything, and manage balance and manage obedience to God and nature? How can you do that? It's all of a sudden your whole life is a battle between the two. Animals do not have that, right? And for our ability to do that, we have advanced as a species. And thankfully, we have, been able to build a way of life and a system for living, in this state of mind, in this consciousness, right? But it's not how it was intended. When you look at the change that occurred from having no awareness of self and being one with God in the Garden of Eden, then being banished into the wilderness and being lost and seeking and looking, there's a clear correlation between what life can be and what life should not be. There's a clear connection to what you see in the world. This is a real, it's not even metaphoric. It's literal. It's a literal display of how the world works and how existence works. Being banished into vulnerability and into the wildness and being disconnected from God, now having to fend for yourself. First instance of self-preservation. You experience things that you wouldn't have experienced. You experience things that animals don't experience. You experience things that are tied to your consciousness, right? When you're in the wilderness and you're disconnected from God, all of a sudden everything seems unsure. You have to figure it out. You have to pick it. You don't know, right? You're experiencing fear, savagery. Then you have corruption, manipulation. When you're out in the wilderness and you're disconnected from God, you have disbelief. You kind of believe in God, but then you kind of don't. You believe in the wilderness. You have disobedience. You don't know if you should listen to that. You don't know. You feel like everything that's happening in front of you. You become a machine, a force of self-preservation, control. You see destruction, manipulation come from these places, right? Serving false gods. All of these things are attached to your self-awareness. All of the world's worst things are connected to human self-awareness. If we were not having that ability, that burden, then you would not see any of the world's most heinous things. You wouldn't see any of them. You would see nature taking course, right? And nothing more than that, right? God's plan is eternal. Our plans are disconnected. And people spend all their time and energy trying to serve our plans. This is the underlying context of what was given back to us on resurrection. Because in the wilderness, in the midst of all of the evil and self-serving, midst of all of the destruction and hatred, the inhumanity that people were doing against each other during this period of time, in the midst of all of the evil, God facilitated the birth of Jesus. How did he do that? It's not because Joseph and Mary went and just did their own thing. No, God doesn't need you to pick what's going on. That God doesn't need you to make his plan work. In the midst of one of the worst periods in time of humanity, God forced Jesus into the world. And right in the middle of all of the evil and destruction, God carved a path for Jesus of safety and formation. Jesus was born into human flesh, just like all of us. He was born into vulnerability. He was born of a human. He was born on the earth. He was less connected than Adam at birth, more vulnerable, but he chose to walk the path that God had laid out for him. He chose God. He was loyal to God. He was obedient to God. It was a choice. Imagine if the story was not of his immense obedience. What would we have? It's not a story of him not suffering. It's not a story of him not being tempted. He was tempted. He endured suffering, but he chose to be obedient. He chose to follow God's plan for him. Despite the oppressive influence of the world, it wanted to follow the wilderness, follow the self-serving. People were committed to it at this point. They had done things and they had accomplished things and they had acquired and amassed things that made them want to keep self-serving, want to keep making themselves kings and creating idols for other people to follow and for them to get rich on. They wanted to keep doing that. And when Jesus followed his path and made it to the end, he was the only one who was uncorrupted enough to speak the truth and be obedient to the truth. And he went through his formation, he went through his consecration, right? And he came back and he was loyal to God anyway. He was obedient to God anyway. He chose it, right? We all could choose it. This is the miracle of the story because he chose it. They did everything they could to make him go against God, to make him be disloyal, to make him contest God, to make him disown God. They did everything they could to break him, everything they could to erase his message, to destroy him, right? They did everything they could to make a mockery of him and this whatever God he said he's claimed. If he's God, then how come he's not saved? How come you're suffering like the rest of us? They did everything they could to remove the work he had done, remove and influence the people, change them, make them see the wilderness, believe in the wilderness. They did everything they could to destroy him, destroy his message. They did everything they could to convince and influence and maintain, retain control over the narrative and the people. They did everything they could to destroy Jesus and destroy his message of God, destroy the proof of his miracles. They did everything they could. He stayed connected anyway. He stayed loyal anyway. Up until his dying breath, he stayed loyal. He stayed connected to God, right? Most people would have disconnected at some point. As soon as the money would have got tight and it would have been hard, they would have disconnected. As soon as some people would have came and contested them, they would have disconnected. As soon as some people would have turned their back or betrayed them, they would have disconnected, right? And people have disconnected for way less. You give somebody $100, they'll throw God in the trash can fast, right? Because they're, one, not obedient, two, lack loyalty, right? They don't understand honor, you know what I'm saying? They just understand self. They don't understand balance. They just understand self. Understanding it is not the problem. Honestly, it's not that they don't understand it, they choose self. They choose, instead of choosing honor, loyalty, they choose self instead of choosing obedience, right? When people have made that choice long enough, when people have made that choice enough times, when you see somebody who has never made that choice, you interact with somebody who's never made that choice, there's a shame that comes across. There's a jealousy, a resentment that built there somehow. You realize then that you didn't have to. What you did out of reflex, what you did out of fear, what you did out of compromise, when you see somebody who did not do that, there is a jealousy, there is a resentment, because you then realize, shame, I did not have to do that. Despite the barbaric jealousy, self-preservation tactics of these hateful people who couldn't stand the idea of their shame, couldn't live with the idea of their shame, despite the tactics of these people, Jesus did not compromise. He did not break his loyalty. He did not trade or shame or speak against. He didn't do anything to go against God. He understood who God was and the power, and he understood the fear and the reverence that he should have for such a being, so much so that you will take anything and do anything to never speak against this or go against it, right? This is the transformational power of the resurrection, because they whooped that man and they beat that man and they bled him out and they put him on that cross and they humiliated him. They laughed at him. They did everything they could. They put the thorns on his head. They laughed, they pointed, they said, y'all believe in him? Y'all believe in him? This what y'all believe? Y'all his God? Y'all believe in us? They did everything they could. They put that man in the tomb, rolled the stone over. He'll never come out of there. When you walk past here, you hold your head down if you like this man. If you walk past here, you hated this man, you laugh and you point. You say, yeah, who did he think he was, right? and then they came back the next day and he was gone. He was gone. They came back the next day, he was gone. They started looking around, asking around, people that had been talking to him. They didn't seen him. He came through and told them, yeah, they thought they had me, right? This is the miracle. It's not that your sins are saved, you know what I'm saying? That you're good now. All you have to do is just believe God. That's not it. Through Jesus Christ, you have been given the opportunity to return to connection, you know what I'm saying? Where there were no other choices. Your flesh had no option but to believe what was in the wilderness, but to choose from all of the false gods and all of the BS that people had, kings and emperors, and they had all type of stuff, and slavery. People had come up with all type of stuff that they thought was real. And then the real thing came and showed everybody what's really real. To this day, people are still trying to make it make sense. There's a million accounts of this. We're all over it. There's so many accounts, there's so many testimonies, there's so many written things, there's so much history, so many artifacts. This happened, right? This happened. To this day, people still understand that there is something powerful about this, but they don't understand what. They just think it must mean I got to pass, right? There's that self-serving, right? There's two ways to look at this. Maybe you are good. Maybe all you have to do is say, Lord, I believe in you, and it doesn't matter what you do on this earth. You just, as long as you believe, you're good. That's what most people will tell you. That's what most pastors will tell you. That's what most religious leaders will tell you, is that if you believe that Jesus is real, then you're good. But I'm going to tell you the truth. And I honestly believe this. If you are born in this earth, born of vulnerability, born disconnected, and you're given the opportunity to regain connection, regain trust, regain obedience, if you're willing to lose autonomy and be a vessel of God, move with balance, move with the world. If you're not willing to do that, if you don't find your way to being that, if you're born disconnected, you don't find your way back to being connected in that way, then you failed the test. The sacrifice was a reward. The reward is an opportunity. The opportunity is reconnection. God actualization, not self-actualization. God preservation, not self-preservation. God provision, not self-provision, right? You are given the opportunity to stand in front of the whole world against whatever they throw at you. Any temptation, any pain, any struggle, and stand on it and regain connection. Disconnect yourself from being unsure. Disconnect yourself from being afraid, being manipulated or manipulative. Disconnect yourself from that. Connect yourself to being at peace. Connect yourself to being at trust and obedient. If you're born vulnerable and without connection, disconnected through your vulnerability, through your environment, surrounded by influence, if you're born into this and you're given the opportunity to reclaim it, to show what you really believe and stand on it, and you don't take that opportunity, you don't take this chance, this time to be obedient, don't think you're good. Don't think you're good. The church is right. The church is telling you the truth. But this is the missing context. Return to connection. Return to obedience. Remove your self-serving mind state. It's battling with your God-serving mind state, right? If you can't choose and stand firmly on what it is that you believe, not only are you not safe, but you're magnifying and multiplying the dysfunction in the world, right? No matter who you are or what you want, no matter how hard you try, no matter what you do, when it's all said and done, you can't fight that and you can't beat it. You have to be realistic with yourself. You have to be honest with yourself. You know what I'm saying? You can't protect yourself. You can't save yourself. You can't save, and you can't do anything. The world is going to turn. Circumstances are going to arise. Conditions are going to change. And you're going to be wherever you are when that happens. The only thing you can do is choose where you stand on things. Choose who you are and what you believe in, what you're loyal to. And I promise you that determines the outcome more than anything you can go do for yourself. So, I don't mean to, bring nobody's spirits down on Easter, or, I hope you're all celebrating painting eggs and all of that. My kids are, you know what I'm saying? But somebody got to tell you the truth, and I don't got to go jump on stage, go get no haircut, go put on my best outfit. I'm at the house. You know what I'm saying? That's the difference. They selling that. I just want to tell the truth. You know what I'm saying? And the truth is, the opportunity in the resurrection is your reconnection. It's not your immediate salvation just for believing. You got a long life to live, and you got a lot of decisions to make. And I hope that you're standing on business when it comes down to what you believe and what you do and who you serve. So that's that. Happy Easter, y'all.